everyone, Miss Lassiter here, and in today's video I'm going to go over some tips for how to ask a teacher or professor for a letter of recommendation, especially over email, since now it's a little hard during COVID times to actually go in person and ask, even though that sometimes is the best way to ask for a letter of recommendation. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video. I'm going to offer some examples and actual templates for how to ask for a letter of recommendation over email for both teachers and professors, so make sure you stay tuned to the very end. Now, again, there's really no 100% right way to ask, and teachers want to see you succeed. If we agree to write a letter of recommendation for you, we want to make sure that you are going to get into the program. We want to show you off. We want to see you shine. There are some ways that you can actually ask teachers and give teachers some extra materials to make sure that you're really showing off the best of your traits and characteristics that we can then write about in our letter. So I'll talk about that in this video as well. I know this can be a really anxiety-inducing topic for some people, and some students have told me in the past that they've really been freaked out about asking certain teachers. Make sure you talk to either your advisors or your college counselors if there's specific procedures you need to go through for asking. Some schools have those. Sometimes professors have in their syllabi a way they want to go about offering letters of recommendation. So just make sure you check out the materials you have on hand for your courses before you ask. All of this information comes from years and years of writing letters of recommendations for students, having asked for letters of recommendation for myself for when I was going to college and getting scholarships and going to grad school, but also seeing students stress and struggle about this over the years too. So hopefully this will be helpful. All right, first up, you want to decide who you're going to ask, and this is kind of pre-letter writing, so you may want to skip ahead for this section, but make sure you're asking somebody who you do have a good relationship with or someone who knows you pretty well. If you're a student in a large lecture class and you have to ask a professor for a letter of recommendation and they don't really know you that well, but you need that rec because it's part of the college or the med school or the grad school requirements, then you want to make sure you try to interact with that person while you're either in that class or later on. Go have a coffee with them, schedule a Zoom meetup, send them an email to see how they're doing. That's always a good way for them to jog their memory and remember you. If it's somebody in high school, make sure it's somebody who can speak to your activities in the classroom, somebody you did well in their class, or someone who saw you grow. I've written really great letters of recommendation for students who may have started off a little weaker in my class, but then worked really hard or did some really exciting projects and experiments, and then started to shine by the end of the school year. So that's always a good option too. Someone who's also seen you in a club or has seen you in an after-school program, knows your work, you've had conversations with, you've gone to their office hours before. Make sure it's someone who can really write about you and not just your work. Make sure you time your ask right too. Sometimes students like to ask really close to the deadline, and that's a little bit tough for teachers to make sure they have the time to write a really good letter. I know I spend a lot of time writing my letters of recommendation. I want to make sure they have good information, they sound great, they're grammatically correct, all that. So make sure you give teachers an ample amount of time before you need that recommendation submitted, and make sure you tell them too when it's due so that they can actually say, oh yes, I have time to do that. You don't want to do too far in advance either, because teachers may forget about it. We have got a lot of stuff to do. So make sure it's within that sweet spot of a couple months before the deadline, leading up to a few weeks before the deadline, but I wouldn't say any closer than 2 weeks. That's probably cutting it pretty close unless it's an emergency, something you need that you didn't know you needed before. All right, let's get to the crux of your ask. If you are writing an email because you're unable to actually go in person and ask this teacher for a letter of recommendation, or because your school or your program requires it, make sure you follow these 3 tips. Be professional. That means correct grammar, making sure you address them properly, however your relationship is with that teacher. Be direct, make sure you are specific about what you need, and make sure you put the ask up front, and then be succinct. You don't need to write paragraphs and paragraphs. Teachers are busy. They don't need to read through paragraphs and paragraphs about your life. You don't need to send them a copy of your personal essay unless they ask for it. But make sure you get to the point and you're succinct and you're polite in your message. So other things you can include in your ask for a letter of recommendation for a teacher, and this is something I really appreciate when I get asked to write letters of recommendation, and that is a few details about the program you're applying for, maybe why you want to apply for it, and then the students who attach either a brag sheet or a resume to the email message. So that way I have a lot of materials to work with. I know why specifically you want to go to this program. I know why you want to do this summer thing, etc., etc. Again, you don't need to write a full essay about this, but just make sure you add in a few things, maybe a line or two about the specific program and why you think you're a good fit. This can be taken from your application or somewhere else as well. If you did really well on a specific paper or project, you might want to highlight that for the teacher in the email. You never know, it could jog their memory to say something wonderful about you. And if you are applying and you've asked really far in advance, you do probably want to follow up as you get closer to the deadline, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before, and say, hey, just coming back to check on this letter of recommendation. If you need any more information from me, let me know. But if they have completed that recommendation without you even asking, or you've seen it and they've turned it in really fast, make sure to thank them. And this is important after the fact. You can either handwrite a thank you note, which I always recommend. It's one of the best ways to maintain a professional and appreciative relationship with somebody, or you can send a thank you email or thank them in person if you have the ability to do so. I'm going to get into the examples really soon, but a few quick reminders. Some teachers or professors may actually require you to come and have an in-person conversation with them before they write you that letter. This is so they can get those details and really get a good idea of why you want to do the program, who you are, and make sure that they're writing the best recommendation they can for you. So keep that in mind. You may have to meet with somebody after you write this ask email. Some teachers will say sure right away. Other teachers will require additional materials or references or details about the program before they actually agree to write it. All of this and all of these tips are just to make sure that we're writing the best recommendation we can for you. So I'm going to get into these examples right now. And again, these are just templates. I know some students get really hung up on what to say, how to ask. You can make this shorter, you can make this longer, switch it up for you, but we're going to go through this, and then I have an example for a high school student asking for a college recommendation, and then I have an example for a college student asking for a med school recommendation. But you can switch these up for scholarship programs, for different types of things, and of course these are geared towards science classes since I am a science teacher, but feel free to change them up however you want for your own purposes. All right, first up, you can say hi or dear. This is for high school, so you can include their title. If they are a doctor, you can call them by that, or Ms. or Mr., and then their last name. I hope you're doing well. Always start with something personal. I can't believe how time has flown by since 10th grade biology. I have so many great memories from our lab table in your class. And maybe include a little anecdote about a project you did that you really love and you still remember. I'm applying to, you can say, UNC Chapel Hill this fall and planning to major in neuroscience. I was wondering if you would be willing to write me a letter of recommendation. I really enjoyed biology and I feel like I grew so much as a student in your class, which is key, and that's really something that admissions officers are looking for too, is growth and specific strengths in specific courses. As you are familiar with my summer lab research and my involvement in the environmental club, and then again, this will ring bells for teachers to help them remember that, oh yeah, the student is well-rounded, they've been doing science stuff both in and out of the class. I was hoping you could speak to my academic strengths and personal interest in science. I have also attached my resume and brag sheet to this email. So this made-up student is ready to go. They have a lot of materials for me to write about. Again, I wrote this letter. This isn't from a real student. The recommendation deadline is November 1st. Please let me know if you need any more information from me about this request. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. So it's a little formal. If you have a more informal writing style, feel free to add whatever style or phrases you feel like will make it personal to you, but this is just an example for how you could structure your email ask for a letter of recommendation. All right, here's an example for a college student asking for a med school recommendation. And again, oftentimes you may need to meet with the college professor because they have larger classes, especially if you're in like a larger lecture situation. For a college recommendation, I would recommend trying to get as many upper level or junior or senior classes as you can for your recommenders, because those classes will generally be smaller. The teachers will know you better and know your higher level work. So hi or dear professor or doctor, whatever their professional title prefers to be. I hope you're doing well. I was a student in Bio 202 and 405 classes and then remind them of when you were in their course, because professors churn out a lot of students sometimes. I'm applying to medical school and I was wondering if you would be willing to write me a letter of recommendation for my application. Straight, direct to the point. I really enjoyed your courses and your work, lessons, research, whatever inspired you about this professor in microbiology inspired me to pursue a career in pathology. Or you could say something about how it's really piqued your interest in this topic, or something related to their course or their research that you feel like has influenced you in your professional or graduate path or whatever you're applying for. As I earned A's in both your courses, I was hoping you could speak to my academic strengths and personal interest in biology. Again, very similar to the high school one here. I've attached my resume and CV to this email. The recommendation deadline is March 1st. I'd be happy to meet in person or over Zoom if you'd like to chat before writing the recommendation. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. And then sincerely, your name. And just as a reminder for both high school and college students, make sure to take out that bracket stuff and put your own text in. That is not meant to be written as such. But there you go. So those are two different examples for recommendation over email. I hope this has been helpful, and best of luck in applying to all the programs, scholarships, colleges, med schools, whatever you need to do for your future, and teachers are there to help you. So hopefully this has been helpful. If you like this video or was helpful to you, please let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss other videos about science education and technology from me. I'm Miss Lasser, and I'll see you later.